Oran stood before the massive viewing screen in the Hall of Observers. His four eyes blinked slowly as he processed the orders that had just been given to him. Behind him, High Commander waited in silence, his gray scales catching the dim light of the chamber. "You want me to watch the humans," Oran said. It was not a question. He had heard the words clearly, but his mind struggled to accept them. "Yes," replied. His voice was deep and carried the weight of centuries of military experience. "The Terran Federation has become our ally. The Council needs to understand these creatures. You will board one of their warships. You will observe their behavior. You will report everything you see." Oran had studied humans from a distance. Every species in the galaxy had heard stories about them. They were young, barely 1,000 years into space travel. They were soft, with no natural armor or weapons on their bodies. They were small, weaker than almost every other intelligent species, and yet somehow they had carved out a place among the stars. "I will do as the Council commands," Oran said. 3 days later, he found himself standing in a shuttle bay aboard a human vessel called the USS Intrepid. The ship was smaller than cruisers, but it moved through space with surprising speed. The humans had built it for war, and every corner of it showed this purpose. A human female approached him. She had brown hair tied behind her head and eyes the color of a forest world. She smiled at him, showing her teeth in a gesture that Oran knew was meant to be friendly, even though it looked threatening. "You must be our observer," she said. "I'm Lieutenant Kate Murray. Welcome aboard." Oran dipped his head in the traditional greeting. "I am Oran. I thank you for allowing me on your ship." Kate laughed softly. "Don't thank me yet. This ship gets pretty boring between missions. Come on, I'll show you around." As they walked through the corridors, Oran recorded everything in his mind. The walls were plain metal, painted in dull colors. The floors hummed with the vibration of engines below. Humans moved past them constantly, some nodding at Kate, others glancing at Oran with curiosity but not fear. This surprised him. They were tall and covered in scales. Their four eyes and sharp teeth made most species nervous, but these humans simply looked at him and continued on their way. "Here's the mess hall," Kate said, gesturing to a large room filled with tables and chairs. Humans sat in groups, eating and talking and laughing. The noise was almost overwhelming. "Why are they making so much sound?" Oran asked. Kate looked at him with confusion. "They're just talking, sharing stories, complaining about the food." She grinned. "You know, normal stuff." Oran did not know. On warships, meals were eaten in silence. Conversation was considered a distraction from duty. But here, humans seemed to find joy in simply being together. He made a note in his mind. Humans engage in excessive social bonding. Purpose unclear. Kate introduced him to the captain on the bridge. Captain Daniel was a man of average height with black hair turning gray at the edges. His eyes were dark and calm, and when he shook Oran's hand, his grip was firm but not aggressive. "Welcome to the Intrepid," Captain said. "I hope you find what you're looking for." "I am here only to observe," Oran replied. The captain smiled. "Then observe away. Just try not to get in anyone's way during a fight." Over the next several days, Oran watched everything. He watched the engineers work on machines, cursing when things broke and cheering when they were fixed. He watched the soldiers train in the combat rooms, punching and kicking and wrestling with each other until their bodies were covered in sweat. He watched the medical staff practice treating wounds on dummy bodies, moving with speed and precision. But more than anything, he watched how the humans treated each other. They touched constantly, a hand on a shoulder, a pat on the back, an arm around a friend. Physical contact seemed to be a basic need for them, as important as food or water. They also laughed constantly, at jokes that Oran did not understand, at mistakes made during training, at stories from their home worlds. The ship was filled with the sound of human laughter, and Oran found it deeply confusing. How could warriors laugh so much? How could soldiers preparing for battle spend their time playing games and watching something called movies? Did they not understand that death waited for them in the darkness of space? One evening, Kate found him sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "You look confused," she said, sitting down beside him. "I am," he admitted. "Your people make no sense to me. You face enemies that could destroy you. You travel through space in ships made of thin metal. Death could come at any moment, and yet you laugh, you play. You waste time on things that serve no military purpose." Kate was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We don't see it as wasting time, we see it as living." Living? Yeah, what's the point of fighting to survive if you don't actually enjoy being alive? Those moments of laughter, those games, those movies with friends, that's what we're fighting for. That's what makes life worth protecting. Oran considered her words. They were strange to him, but something about them felt true. Before he could respond, alarms began to scream throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. The calm atmosphere vanished in an instant. "All hands to battle stations," Captain's voice echoed through the speakers. "We've received a distress signal from Arcturus IV. The colony is under attack by forces. We're going in." Kate jumped to her feet. Her face had changed. The warmth was still there, but now it was joined by something harder, something fierce. "Time to see what humans are really made of," she said. Oran followed her to the bridge. His hearts were beating fast. There were monsters, giant insect-like creatures that existed only to consume and destroy. They traveled in swarms of hundreds, and their bioships could tear through metal like paper. Any logical species would run from such an enemy. But as Oran stepped onto the bridge, he saw no fear on the faces of the humans around him. Captain stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the viewing screen as the ship jumped into hyperspace. "How long until we reach the colony?" he asked. 12 minutes, Captain," the navigator replied. Nodded, "Then we have 12 minutes to get ready." Oran watched in silence. These humans were flying toward death with smiles on their faces. He did not understand them at all. But he was about to learn. The USS Intrepid dropped out of hyperspace, and Oran's 4 eyes went wide with horror. The colony world of Arcturus IV hung in the darkness below them, but it was not the peaceful blue and green planet he had seen in the mission files. Fires burned across its surface. Smoke rose from cities, and surrounding the planet like a cloud of hungry insects were hundreds of bioships. There were nightmares made real. Their ships were not built from metal like human vessels. They were grown, living creatures of bone and flesh and acid. Each one was covered in sharp spines and filled with thousands of warrior drones ready to swarm any target. Oran's training told him the numbers instantly. 347 bioships, 2 cruisers already destroyed, their broken hulls drifting through space. 1 small human destroyer against an army. "We should retreat," Oran said. His voice was calm, but his hearts were racing. "The mathematics are clear. This battle cannot be won." No one on the bridge responded to him. They were too busy working. Captain stood at the center of the chaos like a rock in a storm. His eyes moved across the viewing screen, taking in every detail of the enemy formation. His face showed no fear, only focus. "Navigator, plot a course through the swarm," he ordered. "Target their command ship in the center." The navigator, a young woman named Lisa Tran, nodded without hesitation. "Course plotted, Captain. It's going to be rough." "Rough is fine. Dead is not. Make it happen." Oran grabbed the arm of Lieutenant Kate Murray as she rushed past him. "You cannot be serious," he said. "Flying into the center of that swarm is suicide." Kate looked at him with eyes that burned with something he did not recognize. "There are 12,000 civilians on that colony, families, children. We're not leaving them to die." She pulled her arm free and took her position at the communications console. The Intrepid surged forward. Oran felt the ship shake as the engines pushed to their maximum. On the viewing screen, the swarm grew larger and larger until individual ships could be seen clearly, each one a twisted mass of organic horror. Then the weapons began to fire. Gunnery Sergeant Maria Vance controlled the ship's guns from her station. Her hands moved across the controls with incredible speed, and beams of energy shot out from the Intrepid in all directions. Ships exploded. Others were damaged and fell away. But for every one that was destroyed, 10 more took its place. The first impact hit the ship like a giant fist. Oran was thrown from his feet. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. "Hull breach on deck 4, someone shouted, sealing emergency doors. "Shields at 70%, another voice called out. Captain did not move from his position. "Keep firing, don't stop for anything." Oran pulled himself up and watched the battle unfold around him. The humans worked together like parts of a single machine. When one system failed, someone was already moving to fix it. When one person fell, another took their place. There was no panic, no screaming, no chaos. Just calm, focused action in the middle of hell. A second impact shook the ship. Then a third. The viewing screen showed ships pressing in from all sides now, their acid weapons burning through the Intrepid's shields. "Shields at 40%, Maria reported. Her voice was tight but steady. "Engineering, I need more power to shields," said into the communicator. A voice crackled back through the speakers. It belonged to Chief Engineer Tony. "Captain, I'm already giving you everything we have. The engines are running hot enough to cook dinner on." "Then make them hotter." There was a pause. Then Tony laughed, actually laughed in the middle of a battle that should have killed them all. "Yes, sir. One extra crispy engine coming up." The ship surged again, somehow moving even faster. Oran felt the floor vibrate beneath his feet. The engine sounds had changed, becoming higher and more desperate. Whatever Tony was doing down there, it was pushing the ship beyond its limits. Then the screaming started. Not from the bridge, from somewhere deeper in the ship. A plasma conduit had burst on Deck 6, and 3 crew members were trapped in the fire. Oran watched on an internal monitor as Corpsman Ben ran toward the flames. Not away, toward. The medic wore no protective suit, just his normal uniform. The heat had to be incredible, but he did not stop. Through the smoke and fire, Ben reached the first wounded sailor. He threw the man over his shoulder and carried him to safety. Then he went back, and again, and again. 3 trips into the fire, 3 lives saved. When he emerged the final time, his uniform was burned and his skin was red with heat damage. But he was smiling, actually smiling. "Why?" Oran whispered to no one in particular. "Why would he risk his life for people who might already be dead?" Kate heard him. She turned from her console just long enough to answer. "Because they're his people, that's what humans do." The words made no sense to Oran. On ships, losses were calculated and accepted. A warrior who died in battle was honored, but no one would throw away their own life to save someone who was probably going to die anyway. It was inefficient, illogical. And yet he could not look away from the monitor showing Ben treating his burned with gentle hands, still smiling, still alive. The Intrepid broke through the outer ring of the swarm. The command ship loomed ahead, a massive organic structure that looked like a tumor growing in space. Maria targeted it and fired everything the ship had left. The command ship exploded in a burst of green and black. For a moment, the swarm seemed to hesitate, confused by the loss of their leader. "Now we run," Oran asked hopefully. Captain shook his head. "Now we fight. The colony still needs time to evacuate. We're going to give it to them." The Intrepid turned back toward the swarm. The humans at their stations did not complain. They did not argue. They simply prepared for another round of battle against an enemy that outnumbered them 100 to 1. Oran stood in the corner of the bridge and watched these strange creatures choose death over retreat, choose others over themselves. Choose hope over logic. He was beginning to understand why the galaxy feared humans. It was not because they were strong. It was not because they were smart. It was because they simply refused to stop. The battle had been raging for 47 minutes. Oran knew this because he had been counting every second, waiting for the moment when the humans would finally accept defeat. That moment never came. The USS Intrepid was dying. There was no other word for it. The shields had failed completely 15 minutes ago. Hull breaches had opened on decks 7 through 12. Fires burned in 3 different sections of the ship. The weapons systems were running on backup power, firing slower than before. And the crew was dying with it. 43 confirmed dead. Another 60 wounded. The medical bay was overflowing with burned and bleeding sailors, and Corpsman Ben had not stopped moving for a single second. His hands were shaking now, but he kept working, kept saving lives, kept refusing to give up. Oran stood on the bridge and watched Captain Daniel command his broken ship. Blood ran down the captain's face from a wound on his head. He had refused medical treatment, saying others needed it more. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke, and his voice was rough from shouting orders for nearly an hour. But his eyes were still calm, still focused, still alive with something that Oran could not name. Shields asked. "Gone, sir," Maria Vance replied from her station. A piece of metal had cut her arm during one of the impacts, but she had wrapped it with a bandage and kept fighting. "We're taking direct hits on the hull." "Weapons." "Main guns are down. We have point defense systems only." "Engines." Tony answered through the communicator. His voice was tired and strained. "Engines are holding, Captain, but I don't know for how long. We've got coolant leaks everywhere. One more big hit and we might lose propulsion completely." Nodded slowly. He turned to look at the viewing screen, where the swarm still circled like hungry animals waiting for their prey to fall. Oran stepped forward. "Captain," he said, keeping his voice as respectful as possible, "you have fought with great courage. No one could ask for more, but the battle is lost. You must retreat now while you still can." The bridge went quiet. Every human turned to look at Oran, and he felt the weight of their eyes upon him. Captain walked toward him slowly. There was no anger in his face, only a deep sadness that seemed older than his years. "You don't understand," said softly. "The evacuation isn't complete. There are still 8,000 people on that colony waiting for transport ships to pick them up. If we retreat now, they will destroy those ships. Those people will die." "But if you stay, you will die," Oran replied. "Your entire crew will die. Is that not also a tragedy?" Smiled then, a strange and terrible smile that made Oran's scales tighten with unease. Every person on this ship knew the risks when they signed up. Every person chose to be here. Those civilians down there didn't choose anything. They're just families trying to survive. Teachers and farmers and children who never asked to be part of any war. He turned away and walked back to the center of the bridge. Then he pressed a button on his console and spoke to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain. I'm not going to lie to you. We're in bad shape. The ship is damaged. We've lost good people. And the enemy still has us surrounded." He paused, and Oran saw the humans around the bridge listening with complete attention. "I've been told we should retreat. That staying here is suicide. And maybe it is. But there are 8,000 people on that colony who are counting on us to buy them time. Mothers with children. Old folks who worked their whole lives. Kids who never even seen another planet." His voice grew stronger now, filled with something that made the air itself feel different. "I will not leave them. I cannot leave them. But I won't order anyone to die with me. The escape pods are available. Anyone who wants to leave, go now. There will be no judgment, no dishonor. You've all fought harder than anyone could expect." Silence filled the bridge. Oran looked around, expecting to see humans rushing for the exits. They had been given permission to live. Surely they would take it. No one moved. Ensign Park, barely 20 years old, was the first to speak. He sat at his station with burns on his hands and exhaustion in his eyes, but his voice was clear and strong. "We're with you, Captain." Maria Vance nodded. "All the way, sir." Lisa Tran smiled through cracked lips. "Someone has to fly this thing. Might as well be me." One by one, every human on the bridge spoke. Some just nodded, some saluted, some simply went back to their work. But the message was the same. They would not leave. Oran felt something strange happening inside his chest. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was something else entirely, something he had no word for in his language. These creatures were choosing to die, not because they had to, not because they were ordered to, but because somewhere below them, strangers they had never met were in danger, strangers who would never know their names, strangers who would never thank them. And that was enough. That was enough reason to die. Captain's voice came through the speakers again, but this time it was directed at the colony below. "Arcturus IV, this is Captain of the USS Intrepid. We're going to buy you time. Get your people to the emergency shelters. Get them on those transport ships. We'll hold the line as long as we can." A response crackled back, broken and full of static. "Intrepid, we read you. Transport ships are loading now. We need another 30 minutes. "You'll have it," replied Intrepid out. He turned to face his crew. The blood on his face had dried now, making dark lines across his skin. He looked like a warrior from ancient stories, a leader who had seen everything and still refused to break. "All hands, prepare for final engagement. We're going to make these bastards remember us." The Intrepid turned toward the thickest part of the swarm. The engines roared with new power, as if Tony had somehow found reserves that did not exist. The remaining weapons charged for one last fight. And Oran, observer of the collective, did something he had never done in his entire life. He took a position at an empty console. His four-fingered hands moved across the controls, linking into the ship's sensor systems. If he was going to die here, he would die useful. Kate Murray looked at him with surprise. "What are you doing?" "I am helping," Oran said simply. "Is that not what your people do?" She smiled at him, a real smile full of warmth and something that might have been pride. "Welcome to the crew," she said. The Intrepid charged into the swarm, and for the first time since he had come aboard, Oran felt like he understood these strange creatures just a little bit. They were not fighting to win. They were fighting because fighting was all they knew how to do when people they cared about were in danger. Even strangers, even people they would never meet. Especially them. The Intrepid plunged into the heart of the formation like a blade cutting through flesh. Oran had never seen anything like it in all his years of military study. It was not strategy. It was not tactics. It was something far more dangerous. It was desperation turned into fury. The ship shook with constant impacts now. Acid burned through the hull in dozens of places. The sound of tearing metal filled the corridors, but still the humans fought. Still they refused to stop. Oran worked at his console, using sensor technology to track enemy movements. He called out targets to Maria Vance, who fired with deadly accuracy despite having only backup weapons left. Every shot counted. Every destroyed enemy was one less threat to the colony below. "Boarding party detected on Deck 9, Lisa Tran shouted from her station. Her voice was sharp with alarm. "Warriors have breached the hull." Captain turned to the internal communicator. "Security teams to Deck 9, repel boarders." Deep in the ship, Security Chief Sam heard the order. He grabbed his rifle and gathered his remaining team, only 7 men and women who could still fight. They ran through smoke-filled corridors toward the breach, knowing exactly what waited for them. Warriors were monsters in every sense of the word. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in hard shells and sharp spines. Their claws could cut through armor like paper. Their acid spit could melt steel. A single warrior could kill a dozen unprepared soldiers. Sam and his team were very prepared. They met in a corridor outside the reactor room. The creatures had already killed 3 engineers and were moving deeper into the ship. Sam did not hesitate. He raised his rifle and opened fire. The battle was brutal and close. The corridor was too narrow for proper tactics. It became a simple matter of who could hurt the other more. Sam's team fired their weapons until the barrels glowed hot. They threw grenades. They used their knives when the aliens got too close. One of his soldiers, a young woman named Amy, was grabbed by and thrown against the wall. Her spine cracked on impact. She should have been finished. Instead, she pulled a grenade from her belt, activated it, and pushed it into the creature's mouth. The explosion killed them both. Sam watched her die and felt something cold settle in his chest. But there was no time for grief. There was only the fight. He picked up Amy's rifle and kept firing until every in the corridor was dead. Then he led his surviving team deeper into the ship, hunting for more. On the bridge, Oran monitored the internal cameras. He saw Sam fighting. He saw the sacrifice of Amy. He saw humans dying and killing and refusing to surrender even when they had every reason to do so. He also saw what was happening in engineering. The battle had damaged one of the main coolant systems. Without coolant, the reactor would overheat and explode, destroying the ship instantly. Tony knew this. He also knew that the only way to fix the problem was to enter the contaminated area and seal the leak manually. The radiation in that area was lethal. Anyone who went inside would die within days, if not hours. Tony did not hesitate. "Everyone out," he ordered his engineering team. "I need this room cleared." His assistant, a young man named Jake Porter, grabbed his arm. "Chief, you can't go in there. The radiation will kill you." Tony looked at him with tired eyes. "If I don't go in there, the radiation won't matter because we'll all be dead in about 5 minutes. Now get out and let me work." He sealed himself inside the contaminated area. Through the reinforced glass, his team could see him moving through the deadly air, his hands working on the damaged pipes. He coughed several times. His movements grew slower, but he did not stop. On the bridge, his voice came through the communicator, rough and broken. "Captain, coolant system is back online. Reactor should be stable now." Closed his eyes for a moment. "Thank you, Tony. Now get out of there." There was a long pause. Then Tony laughed, a weak sound that still somehow carried warmth. "Can't do that, sir. Doors sealed from my side. Besides, I've taken enough radiation to light up a Christmas tree. Just promise me something." "Anything. Tell my wife I'll see her when I see her. She'll know what it means." The communicator went silent. On the monitor, Oran watched Tony sit down against a wall and close his eyes. His hands were burned from the hot metal he had been touching. His skin was already turning red from radiation exposure. But he was smiling, actually smiling. Oran turned away from the screen. His chest felt tight, and his eyes were burning with moisture that his species rarely produced. He did not understand these creatures. He could not understand them. How could anyone smile while dying? And yet, everywhere he looked, he saw humans doing exactly that. Ben was still in the medical bay, treating wounds even though his own hands were so tired they shook constantly. He joked with his patients. He told them stories. He made them laugh even as he pulled metal from their bodies. Lisa Tran was still at her console, plotting courses through enemy fire with broken fingers she had wrapped in tape. She hummed a song while she worked, something soft and old that Oran did not recognize. Maria Vance was still firing weapons, still hunting targets, still destroying enemies with cold precision. But between shots, she talked to her gun crews through the communicator, telling them they were doing great, telling them to hang on just a little longer. And Captain stood at the center of it all, bleeding and exhausted, but still commanding, still leading. still refusing to let his ship die without a fight. Then the sensors detected something new. 3 massive signatures dropping out of hyperspace, then 4 more, then a dozen. Oran felt his heart freeze. More, the battle was truly over now. There was no way the damaged Intrepid could survive against fresh enemy forces. But then Kate Murray let out a sound that Oran had never heard before. It was halfway between a laugh and a cry, and it was filled with pure joy. "Terran reinforcements," she shouted. "It's the Third Fleet, 3 battleships, 2 carriers, and a full escort wing." On the viewing screen, Oran saw them. Human warships, massive and bristling with weapons, pouring out of hyperspace like angels of death. They crashed into the swarm with devastating force, their guns lighting up space with beams of destruction. The caught between the wounded Intrepid and these fresh attackers did not stand a chance. Within an hour, the swarm was broken. Within 2 hours, it was destroyed completely. And below them, on Arcturus IV, 12,000 civilians watched the skies clear and knew they would live. The Intrepid had done the impossible. It had held the line. Captain sat down heavily in his command chair. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "All hands, this is the captain. The battle is over. We won." The bridge erupted in cheers. Humans hugged each other. Some cried, some laughed, some just sat in silence, too exhausted to do anything else. Oran stood in the corner and watched them celebrate. These strange, soft, illogical creatures who had just done something that no would ever have attempted. They had stared into the face of certain death and refused to blink. And now they were alive. Not all of them. 47 crew members had died, including Tony and Amy and dozens of others whose names Oran did not know. But the rest had survived. The colony had survived. Because humans did not know how to give up. Because they could not accept defeat when others were counting on them. Oran finally understood what he was witnessing. It was not courage. It was not training. It was not even loyalty. It was love. A deep, fierce, terrible love for each other and for everyone they had sworn to protect. And it was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Arcturus IV. The USS Intrepid floated in the orbital shipyards of Earth, its broken hull surrounded by repair drones and construction platforms. The ship would live again, the engineers said. It would take months, but she would fly once more. Oran stood at the observation window of the station, watching the repair work. His 4 eyes traced the scars on the ship's surface, each one a memory of fire and death, and something that his people had no word for. Behind him, the door opened. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. "Lieutenant Murray," he said, "I was wondering when you would find me." Kate walked up to stand beside him. She looked different now. The burns on her face were healing, but there would be scars. Her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "The memorial service is in an hour," she said. "Will you come?" Oran nodded slowly. "I will. Your people deserve to be honored." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars beyond the shipyard. "I have finished my report," Oran said finally. "High Commander has been waiting for my observations. I will transmit them today." Kate looked at him with something like concern. "What did you write?" Oran reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data chip. "Would you like to hear it?" She hesitated, then nodded. Oran activated the chip, and his own voice filled the air, speaking the words he had carefully chosen over many sleepless nights. "To High Commander and the Council of the Collective, I was ordered to watch humans in battle. I have done so. I was ordered to observe their tactics, their strategies, their weaknesses and strengths. I have observed all of these things. And now I understand them completely." Kate stood very still, listening. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are larger and more heavily armored. They have better natural weapons. Even we are physically superior in almost every way. Humans are not the most advanced species. Their technology, while impressive, is young compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. Their ships are small. Their weapons are average. Their defensive systems are adequate but not exceptional. They lack telepathy, which many species possess. They have no natural armor to protect their soft bodies. They have only one heart, and if it stops, they die. They are fragile. They are limited. By every logical measurement, they should be easy to defeat. And yet they are not, and I have spent these past weeks trying to understand why. Oran's recorded voice grew quieter, more thoughtful. The answer, I have learned, is something the humans call many different names. They call it duty. They call it honor. They call it love. They call it stubbornness. Some simply call it being human. I watched a medic named Ben run into fire 3 times to save who might already have been dead. When I asked why, he could not explain it. He simply said he had to. I watched a captain named Daniel choose to fight an impossible battle because strangers he had never met were counting on him. He gave his crew the chance to leave. Not one of them took it. I watched an engineer named Tony walk into a room filled with lethal radiation to save a ship that was probably going to be destroyed anyway. His last words were a message for his wife. He was smiling when he died. I watched a security officer named Sam lead 7 soldiers against monsters twice their size. When one of his team died taking an enemy with her, he picked up her weapon and kept fighting. I watched humans laugh in the face of death. I watched them cry for people they barely knew. I watched them refuse to give up long after logic demanded surrender. Kate's eyes were wet now, but she did not look away from Iran. High Commander, I must confess something. Before this mission, I thought of humans as an interesting but minor species. I believed they had survived in the galaxy through luck and the kindness of stronger powers. I was wrong. Humans do not fight because they expect to win. They fight because something inside them cannot accept defeat when others are counting on them. It is not strategy. It is not calculation. It is something far deeper, something built into the very core of what they are. When one human falls, another steps forward to take their place. When logic says retreat, they advance. When every reason exists to surrender, they fight harder than before. This makes them unpredictable. This makes them dangerous. And this makes them the most valuable allies the collective could ever have. The recording continued, and Iran's voice grew stronger. My recommendation to the Council is this: never become the enemy of humanity. Never give them a reason to turn their fury against us. Their loyalty is terrifying in its intensity. Their courage is boundless in its depth. And their anger, once awakened, does not sleep until the threat is ended. Instead, we should stand beside them. We should earn their friendship and protect it as the precious thing it is. Because a galaxy with humans as our allies is a galaxy where the collective will never stand alone. I have enclosed detailed tactical observations as requested, but I hope the Council will understand that the true lesson of my mission cannot be found in data or statistics. It can only be found in the eyes of a young ensign who refused to leave his captain, in the hands of a medic who would not stop treating wounds, in the smile of an engineer who gave his life for people he would never see again. These are the humans, and I am honored to have served beside them. This concludes my report. Iran, Military Analyst Collective. The recording ended. Silence filled the observation room. Kate wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "That was beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you." Iran turned to face her. "There is something else, something I did not include in the report." "What?" "I have requested permission to extend my assignment aboard the Intrepid, indefinitely." Kate's eyes widened. "You want to stay with us?" "Yes, I have learned much from your people, but I believe there is more to learn, and I find that I do not wish to leave." A smile spread across Kate's face. the first real smile Iran had seen from her since the battle. "The captain will be happy to hear that. We've all gotten used to having you around. Even though I questioned your decisions, even though I told you to retreat." Kate laughed softly. "Especially because of that. It takes courage to speak your mind when everyone around you is doing something crazy. We need people like that to keep us honest." She reached out and placed her hand on his arm, a human gesture of friendship that Oran had learned to accept. "Come on," she said. "The memorial is starting soon. The crew is gathering in the main hangar." They walked together through the corridors of the station, two people from different worlds who had been forged into something like friends by fire and death and survival. The memorial was simple. Captain spoke names, 47 names, each one followed by a moment of silence, each one accompanied by tears from someone in the crowd. When it was over, the crew gathered in small groups. They shared stories about the dead. They laughed at old jokes. They cried for friends who were gone. And then they did something that Oran would remember for the rest of his life. They began to sing. It was an old human song, something about carrying on and never giving up. The melody was simple and the words were plain, but somehow it was the most beautiful thing Oran had ever heard. He did not know the words, so he simply listened. He watched these humans who had lost so much gather together and create music from their pain. He watched them hold each other and promise without words that they would keep fighting, keep living, keep being human. Kate stood beside him, her voice joining the others. When the song ended, she turned to him with eyes still wet from crying but already filling with warmth. "Welcome to the crew," she said, "officially this time." She handed him a cup of something called coffee. It was bitter and strange, and exactly what Oran wanted in that moment. He took a sip and looked out at the stars beyond the station windows. Somewhere out there, the enemies of humanity were waiting. They would rebuild. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was a dangerous place. But the humans would be ready. They always were. And now so would Iran. Because he understood them, finally and completely. And understanding humans, he realized, was a gift that he would carry with him forever.